Let's do an NBA big board of the least valuable players to the most valuable players, based on how good of a return a team will get for their player, if they get traded this season, part 1. At 15 we got Vooch, who I think a lot of teams will try to trade for, because he's a center that is shooting great right now and can be a stretch 5 for teams, plus his contract is expiring next year. But defensively he's pretty cheeks and he's old, so the teams that try to get him should have players that can cover up for his defensive mistakes. And at most the Bulls are only going to get second round picks. At 14 we got John Collins, who is similar to Vooch in contract value. John Collins is more valuable than Vooch just because he's younger, and if he works out for any team they would want to sign him to a new contract. In the past 2 years, he's been playing very good for the Jazz. He's averaging 52% on field goals and 42% from 3, but he's still pretty cheeks defensively. At 13, we got Jonathan Kuminga, that's a young player who thinks he can be an all-star in this league. So he wants his next contract to be in the $30 million range. But the Warriors don't agree with him and don't think he deserves that type of contract. And so far into the season, the Warriors have been right because he's been mid so far. So Kuminga can be traded by the Warriors this season to get a good player out there like Jimmy Butler. Let's do an NBA big board of the least valuable players to the most valuable players, based on how good of a return a team will get for their player when they get traded this season, part 2. Let's start with number 12, Kyle Kuzma. We're entering that territory where you can see these players going for salary filler and 1 first round pick. Kuzma is a 29-year-old forward that's average on defense and can score, but you do wish he can be a better 3-point shooter. One of my favorite teams for him was the Kings, but they seem closer to rebuilding than to making a trade like this. At number 11 we got Jeremy Grant, another forward that's on an expensive contract. I will say he's better than Kuzma just because he's been in so many different roles in his career. He was a role player for the Nuggets, and then he went to the Pistons to be a first option and did a good job. So I think he can fit into any team because he can add length to any team and create his own shot. But he is terrible on defense and rebounding for a guy that's 6'7". At 10 is Robert Williams. He is what he's advertised to be, a great defensive player that is a lob threat. He can legit be a starter for any team in the NBA that needs a center, but the problem with him is his health. He's just not healthy enough and that can scare teams away. But I think a team will be desperate enough to make a trade for him. Let's do an NBA big board of the least valuable players to the most valuable players, based on how good of a return a team will get for their players when they get traded this season, part 3. Number 9 is Bogdan, who's one of the best bench guards in the league that's on a good contract, but is getting older and isn't on the same timeline as Atlanta's young core. He would be awesome with his Olympic teammate Jokic, and give that Nuggets team a better bench, but I don't see what trade the Nuggets can do to get him. Number 8 is Dorian Finney-Smith, the best cheap 3-and-D player on the market that would fit on any team, because he can be that point of attack defender, shoot 35% from 3, and can play small ball 5 for teams. I think he fits in with so many teams that I think he can probably go for 2 first round picks, because he's on a cheap contract and so many teams can offer the same package. Number 7 is Anthony Simons, a young player that is a good starting shooting guard that is amazing offensively but terrible defensively. He doesn't fit with a lot of teams, but one of my favorite teams for him is with the Magic, that could cover up for his defensive mistakes. But I don't think they would make a trade for him this season since they have so many injuries. The Lakers have traded D'Lo, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 second round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. This is a great trade for the Lakers, because they add a 6'8" wing to the rotation that can be a starter for them and be their point of attack defender. And they add another solid point guard in Shake Milton to the rotation while losing D'Lo. I think with this move the Lakers can be the 4th seed in the West, because their defense will get better and they got LeBron and AD, a guy that can shoot 35% from 3. I really thought Dorian Finney-Smith would get traded for at least 1 first round pick. So I wonder why other teams didn't try to beat the Lakers offer, like the Kings or Suns who need wings on their team. This is a good trade for the Nets because they get second round picks, and I think they might be able to flip D'Lo for more picks if a team needs a point guard. Let's do an NBA big board of the least valuable players to the most valuable players, based on how good of a return a team will get for their player when they get traded this season, part 4. Number 6 is Colin Sexton, who a lot of people just forget about, including me. The NBA has so many good guards that it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. Like, here's a guy that can be a 6-man for any contending teams and can be a starter when you have players that are injured, and he's only making $19 million, but nobody has traded for him, and he's just chilling in Utah. I could see him being a great bench scorer for the Magic or the Rockets, who needs some scoring and can cover up for his defensive mistakes. Number 4 is Brandon Ingram, who wants a max contract, and it's hard to find a team who would want to trade for him. He's in that group of players that can play like an all-star in some games, but then it's just mid for most of the games they play. But people will look at those all-star type of games and say that's who he is, and I think at this point he's just who he is. Number 4 is Zion. This isn't a spicy take at this point. The Pelicans should look at trading Zion because they built this team around him, and he's just never healthy enough to see what this team looks like. Like, he's only had 2 healthy seasons out of 5, and the injuries are just going to get worse as he ages. So what's the point of using more assets to build around him? They'll probably get salary filler and 2 first round picks for him. Let's do an NBA big board of the least valuable players to the most valuable players, based on how good of a return a team will get for their player when they get traded this season, part 5. Number 3 is Cam Johnson. He is the main wing that everyone is looking at right now that they want to add to their team, and it makes sense. He's a 6'7" wing that's a good defender and shoots 40% from 3, and he's only making $20 million. That's just the type of player a lot of teams will give up at least 2 first round picks for. Number 2 is Zach LaVine. He's playing so good this season that his contract doesn't look as bad as it did last year. He's a good scorer that can pass but is terrible on defense. I think a team that should trade for him is the Pistons, because they give Cade a guy that can create his own shot, and they have plenty of players that can match LaVine's salary. Number 1 is obviously Jimmy Butler. He gives teams a wing that can defend, create his own shot, and draw fouls. The only negatives about him are his age, his injury history, and that he wants a max contract. He can still help any team, but it's hard to find a team that wants a 35-year-old player on their team. And the Heat are looking for a good trade package and don't want to trade him for just anything. So who knows if Jimmy will get traded by February 6th or if this is going to be an off-season issue. Jimmy Butler has to be the most entertaining NBA player when it comes to making a team so uncomfortable that they have to trade him. Since he's returned to Miami for whatever he's been dealing with, he's just been doing cardio in Miami games. And after the game against the Pacers, just talked about how he has no joy playing basketball and that he will never have joy playing basketball for that Miami Heat. And after his presser, Sham sent out the tweet that Jimmy is willing to play for any team that trades for him. This man would rather play with the Washington Wizards and Utah Jazz than the Heat. Sadly, I do think this takes my Suns out of the running for him because the only way the Suns had a chance to get him was if he only wanted to come to Phoenix. But now that everyone has a chance to get him, the Suns just don't have the assets to compete with other teams. SGA has to be the favorite to win the MVP this season. He has to be the best guard in the NBA right now. He's been consistently amazing for the Thunder. They are 27-5 right now. This man is guaranteed to drop 30 points on any team any night. And what I think sets him apart from other players is that he's also a good defender. Usually players that are really good on offense are below average defenders like Jokic and Luka. And the Thunder had a stretch this season where they had no centers, and somehow they still won games and only have 5 losses. Some people probably want Tatum to win the MVP, but his supporting cast is better than SGA's. And I just don't think SGA and Tatum are at the same level. SGA is better. Draymond Green has to be the funniest player in the NBA right now. He went on his podcast and really said that the Jordan Poole situation taught him how to be a better vet. Like, what is this man talking about? Why do you need to learn as a vet that you shouldn't punch your teammates? It's not like you're 2 years into your career like Bobby Portis was when he punched his teammate. Draymond has been in the league for 13 years. He should know his role as a vet is to help out his younger teammates. And now look at what's happened to the Warriors since that incident. They traded Poole for Chris Paul that was on the team for a year, and then used that cap space to sign other vet players that haven't filled the role the Warriors need on this team, which is a player that can create his own shot so Steph can get some rest. If Jordan Poole was on the Warriors right now, he would be able to help Steph as that bench scorer that this team needs. It's wild that the Nuggets are 9-2 with Russell Westbrook as a starter. I remember when the news dropped that Jokic wanted Westbrook on the team, I was just confused. Russ just needs the ball too much for a guy that can't score efficiently anymore. And he just can't hit threes to give proper spacing to Jokic. These are some of the reasons that Russ hasn't worked out with the Lakers or Clippers. But I guess I was wrong. Jokic can just make anyone good when they play with him. And I think it helps Russ that Jokic is a great passer that can easily find him if he's cutting to the rim. And Jokic is hitting 50% from 3. This gives Russ more space to do what he does best and attack the rim. And if players want to stop Russ from attacking the rim, someone will have to be open at the 3-point line. And that's just an easy read for Russ. This Memphis team is just built for the regular season. In 2 of their last 3 seasons, they've been the 2nd seed in the West. And even when they had their worst injury-riddled season last year, they still won 27 games. This season, they're 23-11 and are the 2nd seed in the West. They have young players in depth that play the right way and compete. And they always seem to find good players through the draft or free agency that no one is paying attention to. Jalen Wells, their 2nd-round pick, is playing important minutes for them and is playing good. Jay Huff is a great backup center that is shooting 41% from 3. Scottie Pippen Jr. is a great defensive backup point guard for them. And what's crazy is this Grizzlies team have been playing good without Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. The Bucks just had one of the worst defensive possessions that I've ever seen that led to them losing a game they could have won. With 50 seconds left in the quarter and the Bucks being down by 3, Cam Johnson comes and screens for Ben Simmons. Bobby Portis fights over the screen to double team Ben Simmons, who will never shoot a 3, and just leaves Cam Johnson wide open, who's a 40% 3-point shooter. What makes it worse is that Cam also got the foul, so it was a 4-point play that sealed the win for the Nets. The best comparison to this is a team doubling DeAndre Jordan at the 3-point line and leaving Chris Paul open.